So this is the case. Your client is in the apparel business and his profits have shrunk over some time now. He wants your help to diagnose the problem and give recommendations if possible. Okay. So just like take 30 seconds, get yourself familiar with the problem. So cool. If everyone's read the case, now for a problem like this, the main point here is to control the urge to jump into the problem immediately. A lot of people, what they would end up doing at this point of time is start diagnosing immediately that what is happening and what should be done about it. Right? I would actually request you to wait a little bit and think of this analogy. If I tell you today, yeah, I have a pain, would you immediately give me a medicine or would you want to ask a few things before? You would ask me the questions like, since when is it happening? Where is it happening? And what is the intensity of it? Right? Three very obvious questions. Look back. These are the three things you always ask someone if they tell you that, hey, I'm not feeling comfortable, or if I have a certain kind of pain. If you remember these three questions itself, you will not go so wrong with the profitability case. Because if I draw the analogy perfectly, it's this situation only, that an organization is in pain and we need to know three things before we can do anything else. The first thing, how much? Okay. So I would want to understand, okay, fine, the profits have shrunk. What are we talking about? Give me a ballpark number. Because as you can appreciate, if the answer is that the profits have shrunk by 2% versus if the answer is the profits have shrunk by 30%, my problem has a different magnitude altogether. If it's 30%, it's more structural. If it's 2%, it's more of a blip. The way I will look at facts will be different. So I need to know this upfront. Okay. So that's the first question. By how much have the profits reduced or how much is the pain? Second, since when? Again, I would want to understand whether this is a problem which initiated 3 months ago or whether it's been going for the last 5 years. Because again, here the phrase I've used is the problem is over some time. That's a phrasing that might mean different things for different people. Some people might assume 3 months from this, some people might assume 3 years from this. Okay. So it's important that we pin it down. What do you mean by some time? Or how long has this pain existed? Okay. So for the purpose of this case, let's assume we're talking about a 5% loss. And it's been happening for about 8 months now. Okay. Oh, by the way, this reminds me, one of you also said that as the case was progressing, the analysis became slightly difficult to understand. I'm really sorry about that. My handwriting is pathetic and I'm not the most organized person in the world. I'll try to be a little cleaner, but I can't promise anything. Once I get in the flow of my thought process, it's very hard for me to get out of it. So sorry about that. I understand it's a pain. Anyhow, coming back to the problem. So if you're looking at any profitability case, you have to ask these three things. Okay. How much, for how long, and let's get to the third question, where. Okay. And I'll park this for now because I don't know enough about my client right now for me to ask this question. So in any profitability case, before you get into the problem solving part of it, my typical hack is that I try to understand if I can visualize my client a little bit more. Right now, when they say apparel business, yeah, even Raymond's is in the apparel business, even Louis Vuitton is in the apparel business, and even the guy who, like the street hawker at CP, who sells shirts for $50, is also in the apparel business. I want to understand the scale of the business. I want to understand a few things about the client before I can move forward. So it is prudent that I try to understand this slightly more. So I will do something like this. Okay, when you say our client is in the apparel business, I would want to basically understand what do they do, or to make it sound more business like, I would want to understand where do they lie in the value chain of things. Okay, are they manufacturers? Are they just retailers, or do they have like a mix of things? Okay, so that's essentially what you want to understand from the interviewer, because the answer defines who your client is, and you cannot ever solve a problem without asking this question. Frankly, if you don't ask this question upfront, you will be negatively judged, because all that it shows is that you're trying to solve a problem even before understanding who the client is. You have to be client friendly in a case interview, and this is like the worst thing you can portray, that I don't even bother who the client is. I'm such a good problem solver. Okay, so I hope I've emphasized that enough. So a client is in the apparel business and you want to understand what do they do. So I give you an answer. So our client is basically a retailer, and they house all the major brands. Okay, and typically they have two types of offerings. They have premium offerings, and then they have what are known as mid segment offerings. Okay, so cool. Now I have a better understanding, and then I want to know, okay, where is the client located? Is this problem based out of India? Is this problem based out of US, UK, what? Okay. Again, another thing we want to understand about the client. So I would say, okay, fine. The client is based out of India, and more specifically, they have presence in the metro cities of Bombay, Delhi, and Bangalore. Okay. So Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore. Perfect. So now I understand my client a little bit better. And this is now when I ask my third question, which was pending. Okay. Now, here one basic thing about businesses typically don't lead in every aspect of their business operation. Losses happen when something is going wrong, not when everything is going wrong. Okay. So it is prudent to assume that only one part of the business would be affected more than the other. And let's say even when everything is getting affected, not everything would be affected to the equal magnitude. So you have to identify which is the biggest problem area. Okay. And this is the third question that we will ask. Okay. So now I ask, okay, fine, great. So now that we know that our client is in the premium segment and is in the mid premium segment, and that we are over 3 locations, Mumbai, Delhi, and Bangalore, what I want to understand is, A, what kind of store, when we say we are a retailer, what kind of store are we talking about? And within these 3 cities, is there a particular city or a particular kind of store, a particular store which is more of a problem for our client right now? Do we have some kind of data to support that? Okay. Now I've asked 2-3 things here, and it's typically good if you ask your question in this manner upfront, wherein with one question you can kind of ask couple of things. Don't make that 4 or 5, because then the interviewer will forget to answer all of them. But you can definitely bundle a couple of things so that you can economize on the time that you have. Okay. So how many stores, and is there a particular store which is facing a problem? Those are my 2 questions here. And is what kind of format do they have? Okay. So my interviewer tells me, so our client basically operates out of big stores, and they have all 3 kinds of formats. Okay. They have stores located in malls. They have stores located in large retail locations which are not malls, and they have stores located on random big streets. Okay. And they have 3 stores in Mumbai, 1 in Delhi, sorry, 3 in Mumbai, 1 in Delhi, and 1 in Bangalore. And out of the 3 in Mumbai, it's only one of them which is facing a problem. The other 4 stores seem to be doing just fine. Okay. So I hope you can appreciate that now my problem becomes much clearer. I have a clear problem. Out of the 5 stores my client has, only one of them is facing a problem. Overall, the problem has been coming in for 8 months. And overall, at a company-wide level, I'm facing a 5% loss coming from just one store. Now, this is a point where you can draw some inferences. And I mentioned in the first session that the ability to draw inferences is a key skill which differentiates a good and an average case solver. So here I will draw that inference. I will say, oh wow, we are facing a company-wide loss of 5% from just one store. Am I right to assume that this store is like one of the biggest stores that we have and has significant footprint on our business, and that's why our client is troubled? And that's exactly what is happening. So the interviewer is more likely to tell you, okay, fine, yeah, that's exactly the case. This is our biggest store, and that's why we are so worried. And this store is big enough, and I can now drill down into more specifics. Okay, so can I get a bit better understanding of where this store is located within Bombay? And you get to know, yes, so this is located in the Phoenix Mall, in the Lower Parel area of Bombay. Perfect. So now I can actually visualize where the problem is. It's in a particular store in Lower Parel Mall of in the Phoenix Mall in Lower Parel, and it's a big store which is driving significant revenues for my client through its 2 segments, premium and mid-premium. Okay, and if you just go back and think, these are pretty generic questions to ask. Like instead of in the apparel business, my client was selling cars, I would still ask the same set of questions. Kitna, how much is the loss? For how long? What kind of cars do you sell? How many stores do you have? Is there a particular store which is facing a problem? So what I want to impress here is that these preliminary questions are pretty fungible across different types of problems that you will encounter. So remember the 3 things you will ask when someone is in pain, and you will have a very solid starting point when you begin your cases. Okay. Now, a big thing to consider here is, do I ask more questions or not at this point of time? That's really a personal call. I would suggest that don't waste too much time on asking questions. You can throw your questions throughout the case also. And this much information is pretty decent to begin a case. I don't think I would have asked less questions, but even if you ask a couple of more questions, let's say, that's not a problem. And the art and science of asking questions is always a work in progress. It is something which will trouble almost all of you to begin with, but you will get better at it as you incorporate more and more feedback. Okay. So let's now move from the problem and understanding the problem better to the problem solving and linking it back to the sheet. I would have written this problem statement here, and all of this would have gone here. Okay. Now I'll deal with space, this space, this space, and maybe this space if I have like some good ideas to share. Okay. So perfect. So now we have to start solving this problem. Typically, all profit and loss cases start like this. Profits, if they are going down, they are a function of the revenues and the costs. So either my revenues must be going down or my costs are going up, or at least my costs are going up faster than my revenues are going up. Okay. So those are the possibilities that I have, that net my costs are more than my revenues than they were earlier. Okay. So you just begin like this. So my profits are going down. It's either a revenue side problem or a cost side problem, or maybe a mixture of both. And at this point of time, you can ask the interviewer if they would want you to focus on either the revenue or the cost. Okay. More often than not, the interviewer will throw the question back at you that, okay, fine, What do you want to do first? Do you have any hypothesis for me? Now this becomes interesting. This is a very good point in your case for you to impress the interviewer. Okay, which is that from the information we have discussed till now, can you pick out which of these is more likely to be the problem? Okay. And I'll give you a minute. Can someone just quickly type it out and share it with everyone? What do they think? Is it a revenue side problem or is it a cost side problem? And what's the reason for that? Take a minute and just type it out. Okay. Uh, uh, Perfect. So Levisha has hit the nail on the head. I think Sumega and Levisha and Samriddhi, Pratik have all hit, Drishti have all hit the nail on the head that this seems to be more of a revenue problem than a cost side problem because only one of the stores is facing a problem, right? Costs are typically more centralized and it might be difficult for me to face such a huge profit decline just from the cost side of one store, okay? Because most of the purchasing and all of these decisions would be happening at a more centralized level and revenue decline can happen more quickly. Cost declines are much more difficult of this magnitude. Okay, so I would actually say that I think this seems to be more of a revenue problem because only one of the stores seems to be affected and not the other stores, right? So great going, folks, who got this right, and this is exactly what you do. So I would say that I will start with the revenue, but we can go back to the cost and see if there's something more to it. Now, the interviewer can tell you, okay, fine, go with the revenue. One smart way of operating here could be to start reducing your problems. Okay. So one way you can phrase yourself is, okay, fine. So this seems to be a revenue problem then. Can I ignore costs completely and just focus on the revenues? Okay. And once I get an affirmative, I cross it out. Because I want my space, I don't want my mind to be cluttered. Now I'm very, very sure that I only have to focus on the revenue. I can plan my time and my space accordingly. That cost problem is completely gone. Okay. So please remember this. Take a confirmation from the interviewer. Can I ignore everything else? Can I ignore this particular side of the problem completely? Wait for them to say yes. If they don't, then do not cross it out ever. Ever, ever, ever. Okay. Cool. So now our problem is that revenues are going down for one of our stores for the last 8 months. Okay. Now we go to the process known as segmentation. And segmentation is really the heart of problem solving. Okay. Uh, and it's a very intuitive process, right? You would want to understand that if I am not making enough money, is there a particular pattern that has to emerge? So segmentation is basically a way for us to figure out, is there a pattern in the way I am not making enough money? And anyone who's run a store, you would want to understand that there are different types of customers, right? So segmentation can happen in many ways. Someone might want to do segmentation on a temporal basis. Okay. So I would like to break down my revenues on the basis of 7 days of the week and try to see, is there a particular day where the dip is more? Or they might want to do it at the time of the day. Okay. Is there a particular time slot where I'm not making enough money? Or you could do it on a type of customer. Young people, old people, not so old people, mid-age. You could do it on the basis of gender and taking it a binary, male, female. You can have multiple ways of segmenting something. It's not always possible for one to figure out which is the best way. Okay. So in a actual problem solving, when you do, like when you are a consultant, what you would do is you will get the data from the client, and you will have to cut it and dice it and slice it in many different ways before the data starts speaking to you. Okay, so it's at a very inherent level, it's a trial and error process. Okay, so don't worry if the optimal segmentation does not click. And I will repeat this, please do not worry, because so many times people get worried, oh, how do I segment this? That doesn't matter. Start segmenting. That's what matters more. And you will find that there's certain conventional ways of segmenting. However, the most useful way of segmentation is if you already have some data discovered in the case, and you can segment on the basis of that. Okay. So in this particular situation, we already had a data that I'm selling two kinds of clothes. I operate in the premium category and I operate in the mid-premium category. So I can, as a first check, I can try to understand if one of these categories is getting impacted more than the other. So I just say, okay, fine. I'll break down my revenue into premium and mid-premium and try to understand if any of them is more impacted. And we find that the decline in premium is far more than the decline in medium. Both are affected. The premium is impacted even more. Great. Now what do we do? So there are a couple of things you can do. One is you can drill down on this information further, and you can try to understand that, I would want to contextualize this slightly, and I want to understand what was the revenue contribution of premium and mid-premium before and what is it right now. Because premium segment contributing less does not mean anything in itself, right? If it was contributing to 5% of my sales earlier and now it's 1% of my sale, that doesn't do much for me. But if it was 50%, if it's down to now like 20%, now those are alarm signals. So just saying they have decreased a lot doesn't matter, doesn't mean anything to me unless I know the absolute values also, right? So before doing anything else, I would want to understand, okay, just to contextualize this further, I want to understand what was the contribution of these two segments before. It was 50-50. And now, because premium has declined much more, the shift is that the premium contributes only 25% and the medium contributes 75%. Okay. So this was earlier, this is where I am. So now I have a better understanding of my problem. Okay. Now I can take a step back and try to understand what is happening. Okay. So one way that people typically break down revenue, okay, is that you look at market size and you multiply it by market share. All right. So market size, how many, let's say we take overall clothes being sold. My revenues can get hit if overall people are buying less clothes, which is the market size, or if people are buying the same level of clothes, but my market share within that has gone down. That people are buying clothes, just not from me. Okay. So I would want to understand where the problem lies really. Because if my market share has gone down, then it means that there seems to be something which is wrong with me vis-a-vis my competitors. Whereas if the market size is going down, that means For some bloody reason, people have just stopped buying clothes. And there seems to be a difference in the taste and preferences that people have. And there might not be a lot that I can do. Okay. So I hope the distinction is clear, because that's a very basic thing we'll start off with in almost every case. That once we understand the problem, we will try to understand whether it's a market size issue or a market share issue, so that I know whether it's an internal problem or an external problem. So I'll do just that here. So for now, given both my segments are problematic, you can pick any one of them and you can try to solve it from that segment's perspective. Okay. So let's say I can say, okay, fine, given the premium segment is bleeding more, let me first focus on the premium segment and see if those principles are applicable for the mid premium segment also. If not, we'll solve the middle segment separately. I hope you see how I'm over communicating in my case solving here. When I say this, okay, fine, let me look at this first and then I will look at that first. That's a requirement in a case interview. Because when you are solving a problem, it's all clear in your mind. The problem is you get selected not when you have the clarity, but the other person has the clarity that you know what you are doing. And getting an answer is not enough. Okay. So communication becomes crucial so that they have some amount of predictability of what you are doing, what are you going to do next. Okay. So let's focus on the premium. And in the premium segment, I'll look at, okay, fine. I first want to look at the overall market size and then I'll look at the market share. Okay. Here again, I will have probably a hypothesis that between the two, I think the market size seems fine, should be fine. The market share should be the problematic thing. And I will explain my hypothesis again, like some of you had done previously. I'm sure many of you will figure out right now also that in an 8-month period, taste and preferences for clothes changing is extremely difficult, right? Unless you're dealing with very, very, very niche kind of fashion, it's going to be difficult for people to move away from something like that in an 8-month period, right? And given the nature of the goods, clothes, so market size is less likely to be a problem. And let me focus on market share. But I will take a buy-in, the buy-in, which is very important, that I will get the interviewer to verify that I'm right. Okay. So I just say, fine, this doesn't seem like a market size problem because in an 8-month period, taste and preferences are likely not to change. So let me focus on the market share. Does that seem fair and can I ignore the market size issues? And I get a yes. One important thing here, when we're talking about market size, and a lot of people goof up here, is what do I mean by market size? And the flexibility that you show with respect to this term can help you with your case solving quite a bit. Now, market is a market, right? Economics students will understand that markets are defined at a global level, can be defined at a national level, and can be defined at a much smaller unit level. And this is how you can play around with it. The market size, when I say hasn't not changed, I meant at a national level or even at a city-wide level. But could the market size at the mall level change? Yes. Maybe Phoenix Mall is no longer a go-to destination for people when we are talking about premium clothes being bought. Okay. So how you define your market becomes very crucial because the answer can change. Okay. So make sure you make that clear. And you can use it more creatively to actually get more information. So let's say I ask these two questions separately. That I understand that market size at a national level or a citywide level is unlikely to change. However, has the market size at a Phoenix Mall level changed? Now, if I get a yes as an answer, that would be very interesting. But let's assume the answer is no. Okay. So now let me just look at market share. The market size has not changed, market share has changed. So now there are obvious things which have to follow. Irrespective of who you are, what your thought process is, there is something which is very obvious which has to follow from here. Can you think and tell me what type of question, what should I want to know next? Take a minute, try to push yourself and try to understand what should I be knowing next. And just feel free to write in the chat box. What is happening here with market share? What is it I've never tried to understand till now in my case? And I absolutely need to ask questions about that thing right now. Anya, can you just type it out in the chat box? Perfect. When a change in market share, go a level higher. Exactly. So Atisha Mahajan has basically hit the nail on the head. Everyone, I'm so glad you guys are here. So competition, right? I can't tell you how many times people have solved this case without tried solving this case without asking about competition. From the market share, if the market share is impacted, the clear assumption is that instead of buying from me, people are buying from someone else. Who is that someone else? Let me nail it down. Okay. So your case, this particular case will essentially be solved in the next 2 or 3 questions. Okay. Because you want to understand, because who they are buying from instead of from you becomes your benchmark case, becomes a benchmark situation. Clearly, they are doing something better than me. And that's the problem I'm trying to understand, that what the hell are they doing better than me? And if you can just understand that, the problem will be solved. Okay. So just from profits going down, we have nailed it down to people are not buying from us but are buying from someone else. Okay. So I will do both of these things. I like to understand what my market share decline has been like. And then I like to understand, okay, fine. If people are not buying from us, who are they buying from? Who are our competition? Now, again, just like the market size example, when you ask about your competition, you have to be very specific. Because are you talking about competition in general, or are you talking about competition within the mall? So how you phrase this becomes pretty crucial. So what we'll do is we'll basically ask, okay, fine. I will try to then build in my assumption in my question and let the interviewer tell me whether I'm right or wrong. So I'll say, okay, fine. If people are not buying from me, is it happening that people are buying from some of the other players in the mall? Or are they going outside of the mall, or some other channel has opened up, some other competitor has come up in the neighborhood from where people are buying more? Can you give a little understanding of what my competitive landscape looks like? Okay. So instead of asking a very broad question, which is, what does my competitive landscape look like? And some people do prefer that, to be very honest. But what it does is it puts you at the mercy of the interviewer, that they can interpret the question the way they want. And if they answer something which is not very useful, then you won't know whether to push ahead or not. That's why I put in my assumption that, hey, are they buying from the mall and all within the case itself? Okay. So cool. So I'll ask them what's happening and what's my competitive landscape. So they tell me, okay, fine. So you actually have 2 more stores within the mall who have the very, let's say, who have the exact same profile as you have, that they also are in the premium and mid-segment category. And these 2 stores actually have seen an increase in their sales from what we can understand. My immediate question, and this is like when I'm trying to really show the killer instinct that I'm trying to nail this problem down. And I said, do I have some data or any data to show that their increase is commensurate with our losses? So I can establish some kind of correlation very well, that my loss is their benefit. So clearly that's the only way I am bleeding. If there's a divergence there, then the problem is something else also on top of this. So I hope you understand why this question is important. Because then it's not enough for me to understand what I'm doing differently vis-a-vis the competitor, because the leak is happening not just to my competitors but to someplace else also. Okay, so that's why I asked this question: is the loss commensurate with their gain? And the answer is yes. I also hope while solving this problem, you can understand that while you're actually solving this in real life, how this can be a multi-month engagement. Because the moment I put this as a no, you are sure to have like 1, 2, 3 weeks of extra work at your plate to diagnose what else can be going wrong. So all of these questions are what drives the problem solving process in a actual consulting assignment. Okay. For the sake of the interview, most interviewers simplify the answers, but they still want you to ask these questions so that they have the competence, they have the confidence that you can replicate this process in real life. Okay. So yeah, just 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. So yeah. So we have two stores, and they are losses are commensurate with their profits. So this is where we are now. What do we do next? It's a little difficult to navigate at this point of time. What I try to understand is, now that I know that their operations are pretty similar, there is a very strong urge to go micro, to try to understand the nitty-gritties of the case. And I don't know how many of you have had this thought already that, let me go in the store, let me try to understand what is happening within the store. Has my sales behavior changed? Something of that sort has changed. All of those things are important, but I always like to go from top, then come to the smaller details. So the first thing I would like to understand is, like I did earlier, is where are these three stores located within the mall? And especially in cases of retail stores, this becomes a very crucial question. So my store is located on the second floor, east wing. Competitor 1 is located on the third floor, west wing. Competitor 2 is located on the fourth floor, north wing. Okay. Now, my problem is multifold, even at a macro level. Now I will jump into my hardcore structuring. Okay. Now all the pieces in place, I have to figure out what is going wrong. Now at this point of time, some people try to still break it down into internal and external. There are internal factors that could be affecting, there could be external factors which could be affecting. What I rather do is make a formula which will encompass everything that is there. Okay. I would really want you to focus here, because if you can understand this and get this right consistently, all your cases will be sorted, at least when it comes to profitability. And one important thing when we talk about profitability really is that you have to wear two different hats at two different times. Okay? If you look at things initially, we have the hat of the business owner. When I was trying to understand the pain, what is happening, what is happening with the competition, all of these are things that I am thinking from a business owner's perspective. Now I will switch gears and I will start thinking from a consumer's perspective. Okay, which is and a consumer answers a simple question: will I buy or not? It's a yes or no question. A lot of things go into it, and the first thing is that the consumer has to reach the store. Okay. Second is they must be then willing to buy, and then they actually purchase something. Okay. And this is the three-step consumer journey, which I will break into constituent parts. here. Okay. Now, with some presence of mind, you will realize that it's a pretty simple process because the journey is very clear from entering the store to the checkout counter. Almost all of us will follow the same set of steps. We just have to write those steps down because clearly, if people are not buying from us but are buying from someone else, something is going wrong in at least one of these steps. If I can figure out that one step, isolate it, I have my problem solved. Okay. Now, the final objective is that my dollar value is going down. My sales are going down. So I'll construct my journey in the form of a formula which leads to a dollar value. What do I mean by that? Just follow me here. So step number 1, enter mall. Step number 2, out of that, a percentage of people will be going to the second floor. Out of that, a percentage of people will be going to the east wing. Out of that, a percentage of people will be entering my store. Out of that, a percentage of people will be buying, and then there will be average number of items that they buy, and then I have the average per item, right? You don't need to have a math degree or anything of that sort to just follow this process, right? The right hand side of my equation is a dollar value, the left hand side of my equation is a dollar value. And all I have done is just retraced my steps as I would do for any store. Okay. Here, the assumption that I'm making implicitly is that once you enter the mall, you have to go to the second floor first and then you can enter the east wing. Okay. Now someone can say, okay, what if I go to the east wing first, then I go to the second floor from there? Don't get caught up in those nitty-gritties. Those are not relevant from a case interview perspective. You can just say, I'm assuming that, and everyone will be fine with it. Okay. Because what they want to see is the process. Now, if my dollar value is going down, one of these 7 things is going wrong. Once I isolate which one, then I can break that thing down further. So as I already know that given compensatory sale is happening, the number of people perhaps entering the mall has not changed. Because what my loss is someone else's benefit. Okay. Now, given these stores are located on different floors and different wings, this could very well be a problem. That number of people going to the second floor is a problem. Let's say net 10, that is not the problem. Okay. Out of the people on the second floor, are the number of people who are going to the east wing a problem? Yes. This number has gone down. Okay. Then out of the number of people who are in the east wing, has the fraction which is coming to my store gone down? No. Out of the number of people who come to my store, has the fraction of the people who are buying something gone down? No. Are people buying less number of items on an average? No. Is the dollar value per item going down? No. Now, any of these could have been a yeses and my problem could have been different. Okay. More than one could have been a yes and I would have more than one problem to solve for, right? It doesn't matter. Just like the case yesterday that we discussed, if you have reached this point, to be frank, then you're already 99% there. It just doesn't matter what the problem is. It's a very simple problem to solve at this point of time. And with different cases that you will practice, you will see that what are the different store formats, what are the different things you will consider within a store. Let me just briefly talk about some of the other things you could have considered before I come to this problem, which I think has an interesting take to it. Okay. So let's say that the number of people who were buying had gone down. Okay. What does that mean? That means that the conversion that is happening for people has gone down. That people are coming into the store, but they are not converted to buyers. How do I diagnose a problem like that? Now, you could break it down to 2 or 3 things. Sure. But what I do again is I put on a consumer's hat, place myself in the consumer's shoes, and solve this problem. Okay. So what do I do when I actually try to buy something? One, I enter the store. I basically look around and try to find what I'm looking for. If the information on that is not enough, I might ask one of the people who are working in the stores. Then given it's an apparel store, I might want to try something out. Okay. I might then see what are the policies of the store with regards to, let's say, return, payment, and all of those things. And then I check out. Okay. I think all of us follow the same process. Maybe one step here and there you might want to add, let's say, a little more detail to it. But this is largely it. Now, if someone is not buying something, it has to be a bloody problem with one of these 6 things. So let's say entry is not one of the things. Looking around trying to find something. Maybe 8 months ago, I changed my store interior looks so that people are just not able to find things anymore. I have changed the store format, the way things are on the shelf. I thought that will be more appealing to people, but now people have far more difficulty in finding what they're looking for, and thus they don't buy it. Or when people ask my staff is not able to help them. Maybe my staff is poorly trained. Maybe my staff is rude. Okay. Maybe I don't have a trial room anymore. Maybe I removed my trial room for whatever reason. Maybe I changed my return policy. And that's why people are like, hey, I don't want to take the risk of buying something which I can't even return if I don't like it. Maybe at the checkout counter level, I have changed something. Let's say I don't accept cards anymore for whatever reason. Right? All I'm trying to show you here is that at different points of time, don't think the problem is difficult or alien. Place yourself in the shoes of the problem, draw out a process that you would follow, and almost always you will hit the answer. Okay. So do you realize with this whole problem, there could have been like at least 30, 40, 50 different things we could have analyzed which could have been going wrong. Now, same way I could have broken down some of the other things, but let's focus on the problem at hand. The percentage of people who are entering the East Wing. And by the way, for those who feel that we are going slow, in fact, within this one case itself, we are probably solving like 5, 7, 10 different types of problems. Okay. So this is giving you more exposure on those problem sets also. So Sumega asked this question, won't setting policies include the promotions, advertisement, discounts? Absolutely yes, Sumega. So let's say the problem was with the policies, right? Everything else was fine. The problem was the policies. Then I would deep down and try to break down policies into 2 or 3 kinds of policies. Okay. So let's say again, how would I do that? Remember the example I was talking about yesterday of discounts? I would again break down policies in that. I will try. That's my first instinct. There are pre, during, and post. Okay. So returns would come under the post kind of policies. The policies with respect to after people buy something. Pre would be the kind of policy that I have to essentially get people to buy something. Okay. And I don't know if there's something like during. So maybe two kinds of policies only: promotions, discounts, and then returns. Okay. So again, once we have one of these identified, let's say if one of the six was a problem, I would again take that thing and I will further break it down. At all points, I will be structured over and over and over again. Okay. So that's how I go about this. Now let's focus on the east wing. Seems like a peculiar problem to solve, that people are going to the second floor, but people are not going to the east wing. Okay. Now, can we take a minute here and try to just type out from the top of your head what do you think could be a problem? What do you think? Why, from the top of your mind, why would just place again yourself in the shoes of the consumer? Why would you not want to go to a particular place within a mall? Guys, I'm very amazed. I mean, you folks are pretty much there in terms of your insights. I think you should go back to the initial form that I floated, and on the question about on the spot thinking, you should up your scores quite a bit. Perfect, 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 perfect. I'll use all of these things. Isha has a very good breakdown, which is what is known as the willingness and the ability breakdown. Are people not willing to go to the east wing, or are people not able to go to the east wing? That's definitely one way to go about it. Okay. And what I would do essentially is try to first diagnose a little bit before I do the problem solving. And here I would essentially use Pratik's argument that about a different store or what other people are saying. The first thing is try to understand what is happening here. So I would just ask, okay, fine. In the east wing, generally, I'm assuming other stores are also facing this problem. And the answer is yes. Okay. Then I would restate the problem. Okay, fine. So clearly something has changed in the last 8 months at the east wing level, which is deterring people from going there. Now, what I do for situations like these is use my five senses. Okay. Plus one. This is idiosyncratic. This is a pretty powerful tool or a way of thinking that your behavior is defined by six things: your five senses plus your idiosyncratic behavior. So what I would try to understand, because that's how you perceive the world, right? And if you're not willing to go somewhere, it's because one of your senses is giving you a bad signal. So first I would solve, is there a willingness issue or is there an ability issue? Like, is there, so the first thing is ability and willingness. Can people even go to the east wing? And the answer is yes. If anyone wants to go there, they can go there. There's no kind of physical barrier or anything of that sort that's stopping people from going there. So clearly people are not willing to go there, which is where this comes in. So now what I would do is, I would basically try to understand and have a discussion with the interviewer that from my understanding, we understand the world from our senses and something is going wrong there. So like someone has mentioned lighting. Okay. So what are my five senses? It's my eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin, and the plus one idiosyncratic factor. Okay. So lighting could be a possible issue. Maybe there is some jarring music which is coming from there, right? That a new, let's say, store has opened up which has very loud music. Maybe something else on the music front. Maybe there's a terrible smell which is coming in that region, which was not the case earlier. Tongue might not be applicable here, okay, but skin is. Maybe the east wing is always hot or always cold in this part of the mall now. Maybe the air conditioning is broken here, okay. And plus one, which is basically that all the things we're talking about, okay, fine. If these are not the problem, is there something else in terms of new attraction or lack of new attraction which is drawing people to this location? So I understand with the tongue aspect, some people are saying an ice cream store was there or not. Fair enough. But with these things, you can include them in the tongue aspect if you want, or you could include them in the plus one factor. I leave that up to you. Again, there's no right or wrong answer here, right? So the idea is for you to appreciate that these 5 plus 1 things exist. Okay. So if I talk about plus 1, so that means instead of my 5 senses, something which appeals to my need or my brain has changed that location. So what I would try to understand is, has something opened up or has something shut down, which is causing people to not come to this place. Okay. And then we can go to a whole host of things. Okay. That this is happening, that is happening. But with this, your problem is essentially solved. What you can do is you can make this framework and try to understand, okay, fine. Is there anything which happened like 8 months ago, which could be impacting the client's behavior from any of these fronts? And the answer is yes. About 11 months ago, the mall underwent so by the way, at this point of time, we have already like gone through like so much in the case. It's completely fine to ask a more direct question. Okay, that, oh, this is my framework. If you want, I can go down this one by one after the other, one after the other. Or after laying all of this down, I can just ask. So has something changed about 8 months ago, which could be negatively impacting any of these things? And the answer I get is about 11 months ago, the mall underwent a renovation. And what was found that the objective of this renovation was to add more washrooms in the mall. Okay. So our second floor east wing, which did not have a washroom before, had a washroom constructed there. And it became operational roughly 8 months ago. So fantastic. Now I almost have my entire problem laid out, but I really have to walk the interviewer through my thinking process. So I'll say, okay, fine. That is interesting. Now, from my understanding, the toilet seems like a amenity. People should be more willing to come because of the toilet, but somehow they're not able to. First, I will pin down, has anything else changed? Has anything else opened up? Has anything else closed down? Get confirmation on that. The answer is no. Perfect. So clearly the toilet is an explanatory variable when it comes to changing behaviors. The first thing I will go for is smell. That, is the toilet constructed very close to my store? And has there been like a perpetual issue of smell out there? The answer is yes. Now at this point of time, the interviewer can, sometimes just act funny, and they can ask you a practical question. How do you as a consultant verify that this is a problem? A lot of people give like high five undo answers. That's not required. As a consultant, the simplest of the answers is, well, I'll just go there and physically verify. If I stand outside the store, does it cause more problem? Okay. So that was just a side point, but an important one to remember, that don't lose your presence of mind, that I always have to give like a huge analysis and answer for everything. Okay. So we use your nose and let's say the answer is figured out. So yeah, now you can just have a small discussion. And the thing is that about 8 months ago, the problem was that the toilet was not constructed properly, and there's perpetual water leakage, which is causing a stench to perpetually be around that area, and that's been driving away customers. So perfect, we have identified our problem. Now what do we do? Perhaps 9 out of 10 people will now start giving recommendations. Okay. And honestly, that's okay. What I try to do is do two things differently at this point of time. One, I try to bring the case together. Okay. That does this get explained, or does this problem explain the other things that I was trying to understand earlier also? Okay. So does this explain other things? Yes, sort of. Like we saw that premium customers had taken a sharper hit than the mid segment. So I can use this to justify, yeah, premium shopping takes more time because it's a bigger investment. People spend more time in the store trying on more things. So the stench issue can be more problematic for them. So perhaps this can also explain that data fact. And now I'm getting more and more confidence on my identification of the problem. Okay. So use the problem that you have identified to explain some of the unidentified trends in the case earlier. Okay. One important thing. Second important thing would be that if the problem is so big that customers are not coming here, then obviously for the people who are within the store, the employees, the problem must be more acute. It's not that just because I have diagnosed the problem is being discovered now. The problem might be being discovered now for the upper management, but for the people in the store, the problem has been there. So before I give recommendation, I like to understand what has been done about this problem till now. Because clearly steps must have been taken, and many of those steps were not effective, and that's why the problem has persisted. The benefit of asking this question is that you get answers to all the things that have been tried and have not worked. Otherwise, the risk is if you start giving recommendations, you would give recommendations which actually the interviewer can refute by saying, hey, we have tried this doesn't work. We have tried this doesn't work. So it's better to hear from them and build on things that have not worked. It allows you to give much more detailed recommendations rather than give you the first set of recommendations that anyone will think about. Okay. So what are the first things people will say? You know, talk to the mall operator, see if something can be done about this, use air fresheners, whatever, right? So do this intermediate step and then give recommendations. After that, whatever the recommendations are, doesn't matter. So cool. 1 hour, 5 minutes later, this case is done. In a case interview setting without the explanation, probably we would be doing this in half the time. But the idea of this case was this introduces a lot of concepts that are critical for any kind of case that you will solve from now onwards. Okay. Now we can, any profitability case that you deal with, you can do it far more quickly. Okay. So now let's review what were some of the brownie point aspects of the case. Okay. So one consistent brownie point is your energy level, enthusiasm, and the way you open the case. Okay. The three things that I mentioned, and the effort you make in trying to visualize the problem. Okay. It's the first set of things which really help set the tone for the case. Second, like I mentioned, visually imagining the whole journey, two different hacks throughout the case. I hope you've realized, especially when we broke down the whole trial room, discounts, promotion, checkout, all of those things. The second order value chain that I made, the process that I made when I was wearing the customer's hat of why people are not buying. at different points of time, if you keep doing that, it's very helpful. Data coherence, like I did right now, when I try to see whether the difference between premium and mid premium was explained through the toilet issue. If you can do that, that really shows your ability to draw out inferences. That's the difference between a good and a very good case solver. Okay. It will only come with practice, so don't beat yourself up, but always make the conscious effort. Maybe not while you're doing the case. Once you're reviewing your problem solving process, see if you could have done that, so that next time you do it within the case itself. What is happening now to solve the problem, right? So like I mentioned, 8 months, the mall employees would have tried something here. What have they tried? What have they failed at? Try understanding that and you'll be in a better situation. Correct? Then is the impact feasibility matrix. So just like yesterday, when I come up with recommendations, I can again put them in a impact feasibility matrix, figure out the high impact, high feasibility first, then figure out which of the ones I want to look at later, and then ignore this altogether, which is low impact, low feasibility. Always gives a very good visual look to your recommendations if you can get into the habit of doing this. 5 senses we have covered, very, very important, and especially if you're doing with any kind of experience-based situation, if you're dealing with any experience situation, which is going to be the case if you're talking about anything which has a B2C element related to it, which is the customer. Now, this might not be the most relevant thing for you guys, but try to hear me out. If this doesn't make sense, it doesn't make sense. So one of the most common frameworks that people hear are 4 P's and 5 C's. 4 P's are the price, the place, the promotion, and the product. 5 C's are customer, context, competition, channel, cost. So sometimes people use different sets. One of the C's changes depending upon who is writing, but these are generally the accepted 4 P's and the 5 C's. Price of the product, place where the product is being sold, what is the promotion strategy, how are you selling it essentially, and a little bit detail about the product itself. 5 C's, who is the customer, what is the overall context with which I am dealing with, competition, distribution channel, essentially how I am selling it, and cost. Now, one rule of thumb that I have is that mentally around the 10th or the 15th minute mark, I run this list in my head and try to see whether I have some understanding of all of this or not. If I'm absolutely clueless about some of these things, then I find a way to ask something about that. Because this is the fundamentals, these are fundamentals of a business. If you don't ask anything about the competition or a distribution channel or your price or who your customer is, then you're making a fatal error. So you cannot ask all of these questions upfront, obviously, but around the 10th or 15th minute mark, it's a good idea to run this mental check whether you've covered all of these, you have some understanding, not a very detailed, but some understanding of these. This is also a major troubleshooting mechanism for me, that I try to understand if I've covered all of these things, then okay, I've done fairly good amount of troubleshooting.